Hi, welcome to my Affinity design tutorial. And in this tutorial, I'm going to go through 3 examples and try to explain how to use some of the most important features of Affinity Designer. So to start, I'm just going to switch over to screen share. Close this window and then turn this floating screen off so we can start. So here's a blank canvas. And Affinity Designer is made of 3 personas. On the top left, you can switch between them. The first one is an Illustrator-like mode called Designer Persona. The next one is Pixel Persona, which is similar to a type of limited Photoshop. And on the right is Export Persona, which allows you to select areas of your canvas for export. Now, in the Designer Persona, you have a number of different tools. The most important one is the Move tool, which is the cursor. The second most important one is the Node tool. The Pen tool and the Pencil tool are important. And also there's a Fill tool. And then there's some different shapes, which are cool. And I'm not going to go into those so much in this tutorial. So for the first example, I'm going to show you how to use layering to create kind of a photorealistic effect. So I'm just going to start by dragging in a picture of a piece of chocolate. I'm going to zoom in on that. So the first step in this is to, I'm going to lock this base layer here. So you can lock layers like that. I'm going to get the pencil tool and select the line width. Select the line width here. Something like that. And you can pick a color as well. So it looks like I have black. Okay, now the pencil tool is really a nice, easy way to generate a path because it has this feature called the stabilizer. And the stabilizer essentially drags the tool behind it, and you can set a length for how far behind to drag it. And I'm going to pick a length of about 40. That'll give a very soft response that's not too sensitive. So my movements of my mouse, if I jitter around, it'll still create a very smooth line. And you don't have to go perfect around this shape. As I'll show you as soon as I finish tracing it, that you can go and fix the little wobbles in it manually. But the pencil tool gives you a really nice way to start your path drawing, and then come around here. And in fact, you see here, I didn't even meet the 2 ends together perfectly. But this gives you a lot of nodes to work with, and you can kind of zoom in and fix them. So to fix nodes, we use the Node tool to just grab nodes and move them. So this one, we're going to be a little bit of a bad spot, and this line here is a little too long. We'll shorten it up. And this one, kind of clean this one up here. This tool is really versatile. It allows you to just click any node you want and move it. If you want to add a new node, you can just click on the path where you want to put a new node, and it adds one in. If there's an extra node that you don't need, you can just click it and hit delete to remove it. And this is also why you don't need to be too perfect when you do the pencil outline, because you can just correct it in this setting here. And now here I'm going to fix this one just a little bit. And here, put this one in the corner. Fix that a little bit, fix this a little bit. And here I've got an extra node I don't need. There we go, and then here we've got a little whoop-de-doo. I'm going to add a node and just kind of bring it closer that way. Okay, almost right. And at the end, oh, our ends aren't meeting perfectly. But look, you can just line them up like this, hold the shift button down, and you can select multiple nodes. And then up here in the action bar, you have some options to break a curve, close a curve, smooth points, reverse the direction of it, or join two different curves together. And here we'll just use the close curve button to make that a continuous path. Okay, now I'm just going to go Apple minus to zoom out, and we have outlined our shape. I'm just going to pull this out of the layer here. We don't really need that layer. So our curve that we've made, I'm going to use this curve for a few different layers. So I'm going to right click on it, and I'm just going to duplicate it a few times. I'm just going to go ahead and name these ones. So we'll call this one chocolate. So that's going to be the dark chocolate layer. And then on top of it, I'm going to put some white chocolate. And then I'm going to put some shading. And I'm going to make a new layer on top of that, and I'll put highlights. Okay, so in the chocolate layer, I'm going to fill it in with some chocolate color. So I'm going to go to the gradient fill tool, and I'm just going to draw a gradient across here, like so. Now that's not the right color for me, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hide this layer. I'm going to actually hide all of these layers. But I'm on this chocolate, and I have my gradient selected, so I'm just going to go up here and click on the gradient type. And now here's a chance to show you how to select colors. So this color selection tool is in a couple places. One is up here in your swatches, where you can pick swatches or colors, whatever you want. I'm going to use a gradient. It's right here, and it's also here on the right side. Now to select the color, it's a little funny. You pick this circle and drag it over where you want to sample the color. So for the left side, I'm going to sample kind of a really dark color. And I'm going to click on the color I want, and then I'm going to click there to put the color into the spot. Then I'm going to select the next node, and I'm going to drag it over a brighter color. And then once I've selected the color, I'm going to click to assign it. Maybe I should pick an even lighter color, actually. Okay, so dark to light, that's the gradient I'm going to put. So let's just take a look how that's going to be. So that's going to be my base chocolate layer. Now we're going to do the white chocolate layer. So I'm just going to click here and go to the pencil tool, and we're going to draw some pencil stuff, and I'll show you how to crop that shape into this white chocolate layer. So you don't have to do all of the design at once. Oh, that was a little bit wild. Let's change the stabilizer length a little shorter for this example. Let's see how this works. So I'm going to just follow the line of this white chocolate. And since I made the stabilizer a little shorter, I can turn tighter curves. And I'm just going to go ahead and go right outside of the shape because we're going to clean that up at the end. That'll make it a little easier to do this. Okay, and here I'm going to do this little piece comes in, it goes like that. And it comes kind of like this. Makes that slice. And you have this little drizzle that comes down that way. And okay, I'm going to do one more. The length of this may be determined by how confident you are dragging a long path with this tool. And here I'll show you how you can do it in a few little sections. So I'm just going to cut this part off and say, go down here. and in my path. And I didn't even connect them together. That's not terribly important. So there's my curve up on the top. Now I'm just going to go ahead and draw another one. That's going to be this one, this part. And I'll show you how to merge them together. And you can make this in as many pieces as you want. I'll try to do it really quickly here to keep the tutorial short. So let's just see how fast I can do this. So if you hold the click V or click up here to get the selection tool and hold the shift down, or you can select them here. Now here are my two layers that I'm going to join together, and up here in this part of the panel we have the ability to add them together. Now we have to select these little holes here and we're going to subtract them from it. So I'm going to get my pencil tool again and draw a new piece. There we go. And I'm going to select that and the curve, and I'm going to hit subtract. Now it subtracts from the top down, so your layer that you're subtracting needs to be above the one that you're subtracting from. Okay, here's another layer I'm going to subtract out. Okay, and the layer is subtracting is on the top, and the piece I'm removing it from is underneath it. And now I'm going to take one more piece, this one. Okay. And select those two layers and subtract. Okay, and now I need to add just a little bit of some chocolate down here that I didn't include. That little piece down on the edge. Okay. Go. And I'll take that and this one, and we're just gonna merge them together like that. So that's my chocolate layer. Oh, maybe one little piece here. Okay. Okay. So this is my chocolate layer, and what I'm going to do is, we don't really want an outline for it, and we're going to fill it with a color gradient again. Okay, but when I fill it with a color, I can't see underneath it to sample, so I'm just going to hide the layer here, keeping the object still selected. And now I'm just going to go and select the colors that I want to put in, and then click here to assign it. And I click the other side of the gradient. I'm going to pick the lighter version and assign. And then we can click over here to turn the layer on to preview what that's going to look like. Okay, so that looks great. So let's just take a look at what we have. We have our bottom layer, and we have our chocolate layer, and our white chocolate is not being cropped into the shape. And so what we can do is we can turn on our white chocolate layer, and we'll just get rid of the outline of this one. And we'll take our white chocolate that we just drew, and we'll just take it and put it inside of the white chocolate layer. And there, now it's being cropped to the shape. Okay. Now we're going to do some shading. So we're just going to look at the shading layer. I'm just going to turn these outlines off. Now the shading layer, we're just going to draw an outline around the parts that we want to be darker. So I'm just going to, oops. Let's just draw something and pick a stroke that we like so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so we're going to draw an outline here that is going to correspond to the part we want to be darker. That would be this little facet that's got a shadow on it. And it comes up around here like this. Like that. Okay, so that object we are going to fill was gradient, and it looks like it's going to go from dark to light like this. And here, I'm just going to pick some colors. And a darker color. And up here, maybe this one doesn't have to be quite as dark. Now this object I'm going to drag into the shading layer so it gets cropped to the shape. And I'm going to turn off the background, and let's just turn on these layers one by one so you can see how it looks. Oh, and I have this extra little curve. I don't want that. Just hide that for now. The shading layer, we're going to go here to the layer options, and we'll just change it to multiply, and maybe make the effect a little less intense than 100%, so it's not too crazy. Yeah. Now I will draw the highlights layer. So again, we're just going to draw an outline around the parts that should be brighter. Oops, I can't see my line again. It's just here, this little arrow will reverse the assignment. Okay. And I'm just going to hit delete and grab my pencil again, and let's try that again. So this little part is going to be brighter. Yeah. That's not perfect, but I think it'll work. And so in this one, I'm going to get rid of the outline, and I'm going to put a light color in it, like that. You know, maybe I should put a gradient in, but I like the way gradients look. So we'll make it go from bright white to kind of a little bit of a yellowish, like that. There. Now we'll take our highlights layer and we'll drag it inside the highlights layer so it gets trimmed. No, actually, the brightest part is I drew the gradient the wrong way. Let me fix that. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, so that's going to be bright. And then to make the highlights layer look good, use the screen option. And we'll just screen that on there like that. So we've got our shade here, shading layer. Highlights layer. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw some more little highlights using the pencil. I'm going to zoom in a bit more. Now we have some highlights that are kind of like these lines which go here. See if I can. My lines are white. Oh, that one was ugly. Let me just redraw that. It was a little bit longer of a stabilizer, so I make it nice and smooth and glassy. So one like that. Another one over here like this. last one is kind of like this. Maybe one over here like this. Okay, and I might need to adjust the position of these just a little bit to match up better. And this one is a little wavy. Straighten that out. And I think I want to draw one up here. Okay. Now I've got a bunch of these little highlight curves, but they don't really look like highlights, so let's just make them a slightly yellowish color. And here we'll give them a nice effect. We'll make the stroke line a bit wider, and we'll go over to the pressure, and we'll add some style to it. So we'll make them really kind of pointy, and then in the middle, we can make them a bit wider, like that. And then I'm just going to select these all together and group them. Up here in the layer option, you can, oops, select them, and in layers you can group. It's also Apple G. And here I'm just going to change the opacity a bit like that. So we'll turn off the chocolate. Let's see, here we've got the background chocolate and our highlights, plus some highlights. Highlights layer should line up a bit better. This is what we're drawing, I think. Look better. And we have some shading. And some, why is our shading in there? Oh, okay. And this layer is a bit too intense. That's starting to look good. What was the original chocolate like? I kind of forget. That. White chocolate. Highlights. And lastly, in our bottom layer, we can add a little bit of a shadow effect if we just draw a box. And then we get a gradient tool, and we just put a gradient like that. Here we can pick like a dark color, and lighter. Oh. There we go. And maybe that's a bit too dark. There. So we made kind of a chocolate illustration. Okay, so for the next demonstration, I'm going to show you how to draw an RNA helix. So I'm just going to make a new file here and pick a blank canvas to work from. And I've already prepared in a molecular viewer an RNA helix that I want to render as an illustration. So here's just a rendering of a RNA helix. Now to do illustrations like precise ones, you'll want to sometimes use the guides. And to make guides, you need to have the ruler showing. So click over on Show Rulers from the View menu. And then you can drag from the ruler bar, you can drag down some guides and line them up with the object you want to trace. I'm just going to put these right in the middle of the helix, and I'm going to drag one more to kind of the midpoint here. Okay, right? So I've got a few guidelines to follow. Now, instead of the pencil tool, I'm going to use the pen tool to do more precise illustration. And here I'll make sure to turn the magnet on so that I actually stick to the guides. And if you open this up, there's actually a lot of different options for how to use guides and magnet snapping. So here we go. I'm just going to start and click right at the center of one of these peaks and click and drag, and that'll create a spline. Now, the spline at the top and bottom of the helix need to line up perfectly with the guide. So hold the shift button down and it will snap to that. So we're drawing a tangent to the line, and then here on the center line, I'm going to draw another one and stretch it till it lines up with the slope of the helix. And on the bottom, I'm going to hold the shift down so that it peaks at the right spot. And then again, I'm just going to go for a couple turns of the helix. Oops. If you mess up a spot, you can just Command Z to undo that last data point. We'll just go here real quickly and do this. I'm holding shift down at the top and bottom everywhere. In fact, that's long enough. We got 2 whole turns there. Okay, so I'm gonna just pick a line width like that, 6 point. That is the first helix. Now I'm just gonna go and do the next one. So get the pen tool again, start here at the bottom. Hold shift to make sure it's lined up right, and try to get the shape as close as you can to the template drawing. And it doesn't have to be perfect, this is just an illustration, but the better you make it, the more precise it will look. So the source image that I took, I made sure to render this in orthogonal view rather than perspective view, so that we're not getting any perspective on the helix as we go from left to right. So that is, okay, we have our background image, we have one strand and the other strand. Now these 2 strands, we're going to use them for a couple different things. So I'm going to select them and copy them. I'm just going to go, select them, and then I'm going to copy them, and then I'm going to paste them. So now you'll have 2 copies of these curves. So the first pair, I'm going to go, and now that I have selected the right width to have them, I'm just going to hide the background so it's not distracting. In the layer menu, you can go to expand stroke. And what it's going to do is it's going to convert these strokes into a filled outline. And then you're going to go to divide. And it's going to break these objects into a whole bunch of smaller objects. And you'll see what that's for in just a second. I'm going to select those and group them together. Now I'm going to go to my other objects here. I'm going to do these 2, and I'm also going to go to expand stroke. Now these objects that are expanded, I'm going to go and turn them into an outline. So I'm just going to switch this little arrow here on the color to turn them from a fill to an outline. And I'm going to go to my stroke and kind of pick a nice stroke length that looks good. like this. And now these guys, I'm going to, again, now that I have picked a stroke that I like, I'm going to go again to expand stroke. This is a little complicated, a few steps here. And now that I have expanded the stroke of these, you'll see that there's, now you're creating lots of these little diamonds. I'm going to go and click divide on them. And it's going to turn them into a whole lot of shapes. So here it might be helpful to have your background reference in so you know which helix is going over the top. And we're just going to go through and delete some of these segments that we don't need where things are in the front. I mean, so that we have a front and a back showing. Okay. So now I'm just going to go shift and I'm going to select up. I'm going to select all of these little tiny things and I'm just going to group them together, keep it a little less messy. Okay, so we have one group that is these outlines and we have another group that is this fill. Now this group that's the fill, we can make the color like this. And then we can have our helix this way. Now these colored fills, if you wanted to, for instance, you could make them two different colors within the group. And then this one could be like, could have a red helix and a blue helix, for example. And then we can put our outline over it. So that is how you draw a helix. And now let's put some base pairs in the structure. We're going to go to the pen tool and kind of zoom in a little bit. And I'm just going to show you how to put some in real quickly. Let's make that stroke width a bit wider for this illustration. And I'm just going to have them go kind of into the middle of this thing, and I'm going to click here to the V tool to deselect so that I don't create one long path but many short paths. Or you can take a path that you've already made and just hold down Option to drag a copy of it and then sort of resize it to fit. Okay, and once you've drawn about one turn's worth, you can just select these guys, hold down Option, and then kind of drag them. You can drag a new copy. And if you hold down Option and Shift, it will keep them in the same plane. So you can just drag them to the same spot. Like that. And maybe I do need one more. Let me do this one. There. Okay, so now that you have all of your base pairs drawn, we can just group these. Command G to group them, or you can pick them from the layer. And we're just going to drag this group to the back so that we don't see all those little edges. And there you have a beautiful helix. And now I'm going to show you how to do a cool trick with the brush. So if you go over to the export persona, we're gonna turn this into an image. And so just grab the export slice tool here, and we're gonna drag a box starting somewhere over here on the left side. And you need to drag more than one helical turn. I'm gonna pick about 1.5 turns, like that, to define a slice. And you know what, actually I made a mistake on my layer here. Go back to the regular persona, this one. Yeah, that's better. Okay, now back to the export persona. Click over to slices. And here's our slice that we defined. And then you just click this little button here to the right to export it. And you can select what type of file format. And we're just going to go with PNG for this. Click the little export button. And we can give it RNA helix slice. I'll give it a name, and I'm saving it to my desktop. Now, to make a brush out of this, you can go back to the designer persona, go over to brushes, and you can create a new category of brushes. So this is brushes 2. You can rename the category to whatever you want. So we can call them RNA brushes. So here's a RNA brushes category. And then you're going to create a textured image brush. So click that one. And we'll put our RNA slice in here. Where's the RNA helix slice? That's our image. And there's the brush. And it's not exactly what we want. So we have to do a few little things to turn this into an RNA brush. The first one is to have it click to repeat. So it repeats the pattern over and over again. And we can make the brush width a bit wider here so that we can see what's going on. The second part is we need to define where the repeat occurs. And so on the bottom here, there's a little slider that lets you pick, and just kind of do this real carefully. You get a perfect lineup. And the more precisely you do the original drawing, the better this will come out. Okay, that's good enough for here. I don't know. Okay, and then close. So now we have our brush. And if you get the pen tool and just kind of draw a wavy line like this, you can go and click on this brush to assign it. To make a nice RNA brush. And this, it won't pick the color from where you assigned it, but what you can do is you can actually assign a color to these paths. Oops. The fill and change them. You can make one green, and you can make another one blue if you want. Yeah. And so you can use this to really rapidly kind of create some figures using RNA if you want. So that's the second demonstration. So now for a third demo, I'm going to show you how to kind of create a little bit more designer figures. So for this example, I'm just going to make, we're going to make a little illustration. So some people have asked me how you can do drawings of proteins. So for fun, I'm just going to do a spike protein here for this coronavirus spike protein. And if you start with a high resolution PDB model of the spike protein, you can just get different tools like these shape tools to approximate the shape of what you're drawing. So I'm just going to quickly do this, and let's see what we get. So there's the first shape. And then I'll get an ellipse tool and do the next part, which is this shape. And then I'm going to make another ellipse tool, but one that's a little bit narrower and taller for this part of the shape. That. And then I'm going to take the rounded rectangle tool here, and I'll make another shape here. Let's zoom in a little bit. Now this tool is pretty neat. If you click this arrow on the tool, so you just, once you have it highlighted, click A to switch over to that tool. You can change the radius. There we go. That shape pretty good here. And let me just do this one up top. I'm going to turn these magnets off. They're a little too distracting. That. And this object is a bit too tall, so we're just going to cut the top off of it like this. And select the two and hit divide. And then take these pieces that I don't need. There we go. And then I'll just take all these parts and center them. So you can use these alignment tools to make them perfectly aligned. So that's that part. Oops, this part doesn't. So you can take the bottle object, and now we'll just hit add to make them into one solid shape. And then there's a couple things we need to do here to get the color right. So we have a top part and a bottom part. So we'll just go here and divide. And now we need to make the label part. So I'm just going to make this a bit transparent so I can see what I'm doing. We do the label with a pen tool here. And if you click on the point, you can make it into a sharp point. And now I'm going to pull and curve a spline, click on the point, make it a sharp point, click and drag to make this rounded part. And then now I'm just going to use that and select this to divide this object and do a few things. And now we need a coronavirus looking thing. So we put a little circle here. Now the circle coronavirus has a lot of these little receptor things on it. So we'll just go ahead and put some of those on there. Like that. There's one, and here I'll just do a second one and rotate it a bit. And then I'll just take these two and hold Option to drag a copy of them and rotate it a bit. And then I'm just going to select these four and do it again. And continue till I go all the way around it, putting a bunch of these on. Oops. And all of these ellipses. There we go. Try not to be too sloppy, but. And then we'll select all of these objects together and merge them into one object. It's a little bit big. There we go. Now it's an enveloped virus, so we need to have center. There we go. Oops. Yeah. Okay. Now, this bottom part, now here's our curves here. This part here needs to be kind of blue, and this top part here needs to be kind of white, and this part here needs to be kind of yellow. Yeah. And this top part here needs to be kind of white. Yeah. And this cap here needs to be kind of gray. And make them all solid again. Okay, now we'll just take our image and kind of scoot it to the left for reference. There we go, get these in the right here. Now to follow this ellipse, it's supposed to be that color. There we go. And now we need some text. So we'll just take the text tool and we'll put it right here. And it's in here. Now to change this font size, you can just pick from this menu, change the font. You just need to pick kind of an appropriate font for this label. That. Yes. And this guy, he wants to have a gradient fill inside here. Let's just do that. That. There. You know what? This one can use a gradient too. Okay, that's quick and dirty. And then we're just going to group these together because we don't need that anymore. So we've got our spike protein now. Now we need to make our nucleocapsid protein. So we'll start with an ellipse like this. And then inside of this ellipse, we'll make kind of a smaller ellipse. And we'll select the two of them and we'll center them on each other like that. And then this one, I'm going to go ahead and copy it and paste it a couple times. And one of them I'll put over here, like that. And another one like this. And then I'll get the pen tool, click between them. Like so. And then we'll take our ellipses. Let's see, like this. Oops. Okay, we'll take these three ellipses and we'll merge them together. And we'll put this one on top. There we go. Oops. Inside on top. Like that. Now we just need a little bit of material coming off of this guy. Like this. Click here to make. Click on it to make it, and then we're going to kind of try to copy the shape. Okay. And then We'll make a little edits to the shape here and get this a little bit better. Oops. No. Now this object needs to be filled white. And then we need to draw some perforations. So we'll just go like this. And in a stroke, if you want to draw dotted lines, you can pick the dashed line style. And here in the dash, you can specify how far apart to put them. And that, and let's not make it black, but a little bit gray. There we go. So we'll have some perforations here. Okay. This is the, the virus's genetic material. Okay, that looks okay. And then, oh, the center of this needs to be a bit darker, I think. Show some shading. Okay, now we're just going to go ahead and group that together. And this object, we also want some lines, I think. Except for that, doesn't want to be. This one wants a little bit lines. We'll go with that. Okay, now how do we draw? Now that we have rendered our proteins, we need to create a cell or a membrane. So let's just create a membrane like that. And now we have our capsid protein. And the way you do capsids, let's see, they're all kind of coiled up really tightly here. So we'll just make a bunch of copies of this stuff. And going around and around. Yeah. And just move these ones in the front here. No. Like that. Now we have many of these. Let's just kind of change the orientation so it looks a little nicer. Yeah, like that. Now these things, they need to be grouped together. So we'll go like that. And we'll just group these. And then we'll drag them inside the ellipse, like this. See how it's inside, not underneath, but inside, like that. And now we'll make another ellipse. If you hold the shift down, it will keep it perfectly circular. And this one, make sure and unclick the dotted line style, and we'll give it a thick line. There's no fill. And put the color. There we go. Like that. And now we have our spike protein that we need to put on the outside of this. So we might need to scale it a bit to size. Now, when you need to reduce the size of things, you can pick here to scale as object. That way your lines will scale with the object. I have enough space to put them on the canvas here. Now, Same trick we did before. Take two and rotate them. Now we have four. Yeah, 16 of them. Good. All right. There you go. We have made a beautiful coronavirus packed with nucleocapsid proteins, and it's perfectly to atomic scale and modeling exactly the PDB file of the protein and the nucleocapsid, the envelope of the virus. All we're missing are some extra details, and this could be ready to go. So I hope this demonstration was helpful for you and gets you started using Affinity Designer. Yeah, cheers. How do I close this chat?